sort of crisis is the mother of globalization. I mean, of global governance, or at least of multilateral cooperation. Please.
Thank you, Stuart. My name is Thierry Soetz. I'm policy advisor at UNDP on global economic governance issues. And I would like to address the issue of policy coherence in global economic governance as a key part of current multilateralism, and the need to strengthen coordination, enhance coordination among informal and formal arrangements. And Sean, if I may, even though I'm a UN staff member, I would like to discuss your argument on the G20 as you defined it as dysfunctional, because it's not my sense, and let me tell you why. G20 emerged to take action in the face of the economic and financial crisis, as we all know, because of two reasons. The first one is that the existing set of international institutions, is it working properly?
Oh, it was blinking.
Oh, yeah. Did you hear me? Do I have to repeat what I said? Oh, okay. So the first reason is that the existing set of institutions has been unable to take action, suffering from what Stuart, in my sense, correctly depicted as inertia. And the second one is that it was supposed to be more effective from the most effective forum to tackle these issues, given the economic power shifting, and that has happened over the last 20 years, and that has been accelerating since then. So the G20 took leadership, and as it reiterated at the Cannes summit, the G20 aims to focus only on broad economic challenges. But these broad economic challenges are intertwined, integrated, and multidimensional. This is the point, and this is the issue of interdependence. For instance, global economic growth has an impact on development in developing countries, and the G20 took this into consideration in incorporating the development dimension in the Action Plan for Growth. It has an impact as well on environment, on social policies, and on the pace of climate change, and of course on security. And against this backdrop of growing interdependence, we need policy coherence. And this is my point, because we are witnessing what? The G20 taking leadership in trying to address challenges, moving the issues forward more rapidly when the fear is here, and relying on formal arrangements, I mean specialized international organizations, to implement some of their decisions, only some of their decisions. But we are witnessing in the same time, we are witnessing some sort of mission creep in international organizations that tend to respond to these intertwined, interconnected challenges according to their own perspective. This is, for instance, the IMF, who is leading social policies right now. So, in my sense, what is needed is what Pascal Lamy used to call a triangle of coherence, which means to the G20 the leadership and the ability to build consensus as far as it's possible, to the specialized international organizations, the implementation power, thanks to their expertise, capacities, mandate, and so on and so forth, and to the UN, the coordination process, to provide this required policy coherence in the face of these global challenges. And here would come a specific role to a reformed ECOSOC, and I'm very, very, very precise on this because the current ECOSOC cannot play this role for the moment. And basically, because of this, because of interdependence, we need to take care of long-term interests, and I think this is what is at stake currently, taking care of long-term interests of the whole humanity, of the humanity at large, because nation states are used to take into account their short-term vested interests. But in the face, and because of this interdependence, and which is the real, in my sense, game changer in the international order, we need someone to be in charge of this approach, of this policy making in the face of this long-term interest. And here it is a specific role, in my sense, if we can move forward concretely. Here is a specific role for the UN Secretary General, especially within the G20, where he is invited as other principals of international organizations. But he's not an expertise provider, as, for instance, the manager, the director of the IMF or the president of the World Bank. But it could have a very specific statute in representing the interest of the long-term interest of the humanity in the face of interdependence and global challenges.
Here and then there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tan Yok Cho. I'm the ambassador of Singapore in Paris, but before that, I was the permanent representative of Singapore in Geneva to the United Nations, and also at the same time to the IEA here. And before that, I was deputy to Kishore Mahbubani when he was the ambassador at the UN in New York. So I have had a bit of view of, I can't say I'm an expert, but a little bit of observation of how international organizations work. To some extent, you can say that is related to global governance, certain ways. I mean, there are technical organizations that work very well. ITU, ICAO, IMO, etc., World Meteorological Organization, even to some extent the World Health Organization. So they do provide some things in the area of global governance. What I'd like to share is more, not so much answers, I don't have answers, but reflections and some observations. And perhaps from there, there may be some hints to possible answers. I mean, if we are talking about global governance, the question is of what and how. I think one of the reasons why we are talking about this is the world is more complex, actually. Today, in the past, in a less crowded world, you can pollute as much as you want. Maybe your neighbor gets the pollution, right? Now, something happening in China, pollution in China, you have the black soot going across the ocean. You have Chernobyl, you have spillover to a great area. So more crowded. Technology also part of the possible solution in the future, but also part of the problem. Technology helps us in the area of health. We can find new solutions. But at the same time, as we just recently read, some scientists discovered how to put together a H5N1 virus. Someone can very well put together a smallpox virus, right? So it compels us to have some, again, we call global governance, but basically some agreed rules. What are some things that we should watch out for and perhaps regulate? For the first time, I think human beings can affect and have affected things on the global scale. And one thing, the first thing that struck us, I think, was ozone. And fortunately, that was easier to deal with. And with companies, with governments, in fact, it was a state-led exercise to just get rid of certain chemicals, and we brought the ozone problem. Unfortunately, I think global warming is a more complicated problem. Then I'd like to just maybe focus a bit more on the area of health to see why things are getting more complicated. Perhaps sometimes it's the lower hanging fruits are already plucked. Where WHO started off some 30 years ago dealing with smallpox. On smallpox, everybody, it's such a dreadful disease. Nobody disputes there is a common interest. So eventually we managed to get rid of smallpox. Of course, there's still a question of some countries have stockpiles of that for research purposes that is still not agreed upon to get rid of the last stockpiles, which can cause us problems. Then we are still dealing with polio. We almost eliminated polio. We deal with AIDS. And then there are many other issues that countries bring to the WHO, wanting the WHO to address. But the WHO does not have that much funding. And it became a tussle because African countries want gaps, what I call gaps, to be addressed, neglected diseases that affect millions of people in Africa, but it's not felt in the developed world. So the developed world countries are the ones providing the bulk of the money to international organizations. So once you have divergent interests, then we start having problems, and part of this is why I think the ambassador, former ambassador, mentioned G77 and NAM. Part of what G77 and NAM is about is this sense of solidarity of have and have-nots. You know, the way things are governed. In the old days, things were done for everybody's interest. Now, it's harder to define whose interest and how to, the problems of equity come up more and more. Even in the area of climate change, at the end of the day, it boils down to what is equitable. How do you approach equity? Is it by per capita? Is it by history? How much you have how much carbon emissions you have made in the past? I think it's a very complex problem, but I don't think this problem can easily be broken down to simple units and resolved. So one other problem that has someone mentioned Somalia also, and there again is also a question of lack of global governance. There is a question of fisheries around the world, and so long as you cannot have an agreement on how to look after the whole fisheries in the world, when Somalia became a failed state, as it was failing, it no longer had a navy, and then many countries, their big fishing boats go there and fish out the fish, and as a result, the locals who were surviving on fish, they had no more fish, no livelihood. So some of them started piracy. They started piracy, first targeting the fishing fleet. And then it became lucrative. Fishing fleets disappeared. They started targeting cruise ships, targeting everything. So it's sometimes some of these things degenerate into greater problems. Now maybe if I just have a glimpse of perhaps how some things have been addressed in various ways. Sometimes international organizations comprising of states, I think, can't solve some problems. In the area of disarmament, we are stuck because a lot of politics. And so then we found a group of NGO civil societies went outside the UN and on anti-personnel mines, they managed to gather an agreement on Ottawa Convention. Now even those who don't join Ottawa Convention start to respect it by not proliferating anti-personnel mines. Then we have cluster mines, Oslo Convention, more recently. So I think that may be one way, civil society, with people, with, Another way is, of course, if everybody can, where problems can be broken up into units, if everybody can deal with their own units, of course, then we try to solve our local problems, Then there's a question of training capacity for poorer countries to be able to deal with their own problems, giving them simple devices that can cut back on pollution, on destroying forests and so on. So that's another way. And I think a third way probably, which may be the way to